Welcome back. So we're going to begin the second part of this part of Revelation called "Why Are We in Philly Now?" So we're dealing with the Philadelphia church, but before we did, we want to find out why are we now in Philly? Because most people that study the book of Revelation, I've heard all kind of things. Some people said the book prophecy hasn't started yet, or we're not in past chapter 1 yet, or I've heard all kind of stuff about. So to understand where we are in the book of Revelation, so we went back to Daniel to get that answer, to try to get that answer. Welcome back, fam. And so we're going to start where we left off. So let's go back to Daniel chapter 9 and let's get into it because there's a lot to cover. Again, there's a lot of information. So I'm trying to give it to you as piecemeal as possible, but at the same time, not trying to miss anything. So we went and we studied Daniel chapter 8, if you recall. And when we were looking at chapter 8, Daniel was shown a vision, and the vision involved the Medes and the Persians, the Greeks, and the Pope. Okay. Now, we also saw when we looked at the four powers that scatter Israel and Judah, we know to be Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. And out of Rome, out of the Roman Empire, developed the little horn power, which is the papacy, the Catholic Church, a power out of Rome, religious in nature, worldwide in its scope and influence. That's the Roman Catholic Church. And so we see that in Daniel 7, it showed us all of that. But then in Daniel 8, it kind of went right from the Greek Empire and focused on the religious power of Rome. It went right to the little horn. And it's trying to skip over Rome and went right to the little horn and showed us the little horn. And why? Because the little horn has more to do with the oppression of Yah's chosen than the Roman Empire, though they both, not to say that the Roman Empire didn't oppress Yah's people. It did. But it was the little horn power that to this day is influencing the world in such a deception that it's influencing Yah's chosen people. And so it went right from Media, Persia, and Greece, right to Rome. And then there was a part in Daniel 8 where Daniel was being shown that this Roman Catholic power, Christianity, would overcome and overrule in the sanctuary service of the Hebrews, in the sense that it would cause the Hebrews to be scattered, their memory forgotten, their sanctuary service forgotten and perverted. And that's what we've seen with Christianity. So now in Daniel 9, Daniel was not explained in fullest sense the 2,300 years before the sanctuary would be cleansed. In Daniel 9, this begins to happen, okay? So he was explained, as we saw in Daniel 8, Gabriel explained to him the ram, explained to him the goat, explained to him the big horn that became 4 horns, explained to him the little horn, but then stopped short of explaining the 2,300 days. And Daniel was told by Gabriel, shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And Daniel was sick because he wasn't told that part. So now we found him in Daniel 9, confessing his sin and the sins of his people and seeking answers and seeking mercy from the Most High. And then Gabriel was sent to him. And that's where we begin today. So we're going to go back where we were studying from verse 20 of Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9, and we're going to begin at verse 20, and we're going to go from there, and then we're going to see why you're now in Philly. Okay, Daniel chapter 9, beginning at verse 20. And whilst I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahweh my Most High, for the holy mountain of my Most High, yea, whilst I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, who had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. So again, he's reiterating the fact that Gabriel was the angel that came to him in Daniel 8 and gave him all that information coming short of the 2,300 days. it was Gabriel that said to him, shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So that same Gabriel came to him while he was praying for himself. He said, confessing his sin and the sins of his people Israel, and praying for the holy mountain of Yah. And so he was praying, and Gabriel came and was caused to fly swiftly. The Father said, go. Gabriel came quick and came and touched Daniel to talk to him. Okay? Verse 22. Watch closely. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. About what? 2,300 days, right? He had already explained to him the ram. He had already explained to him the goat. He had already explained to him the little horn. What he didn't explain, the 2,300 days. He says, shut thou up the vision. The time is long, but it shall be for many days. So now he's going to explain to Daniel the 2,300 days. He's, I'm telling him to give you skill and understanding. Okay, watch. He goes and he mentions it in the next verse. At the beginning of thy supplications, Daniel chapter 9, verse 23, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. So see, he mentions it again. So consider the vision, which he had said in Daniel chapter 8, verse 26, and the vision of the evening and morning, which was told, was true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So now he's telling Daniel, okay, consider the vision, the 2,300 days. So he's now talking to Daniel about that. Okay, everybody there so far? So he said, consider the vision, understand the matter, understand what the issues are, and consider that vision. Now, the issues were that the little horn was permitted to rise into power because of the transgression of Yah's people. Daniel understood that, which is why he was confessing his sin and the sin of his people Israel. But he's getting ready to get a lot more information right now than he bargained for. Okay, so here we go. Daniel chapter 9. Consider the vision, verse 23. Now verse 24. And of course, Gabriel assures Daniel, you are greatly beloved. Daniel's confessing his sin and the sins of his people. He's humbling himself. And the Most High sent a message saying, brother, you are greatly beloved. Understand the matter and consider this vision. Okay? Verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgressions, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Now, they're talking about the 2,300 years. And Gabriel starts by saying 490 years are separated. When it says determined, it's cut off from the 2,300. In other words, 490 years of that 2,300 is for you in Israel. Okay? 70 weeks is times 7. 70 times 7, 490. 490 years of that 2,300 year prophecy is for you and the nation of Israel. Okay, so far, right? And the reason he said you have this period to do these things, to make an end of the transgression. Remember in Daniel 8, he said this was allowed to happen by reason of transgression. Right? So this little horn, this Romish power, was allowed to afflict you by reason of transgression, which we saw the transgression in Revelation when we looked at Smyrna, when we looked at Pergamos and Thyatira, the compromise, the Balaam-style compromise that created Christianity, okay, which led them into between Islam and Christianity to have a name that liveth but is dead. So now he's telling them that you have this 490-year period, your nation does, to finish the transgressions. Look, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. to anoint the most holy. That's Messiah. So he's telling him in this next 490 years that's separated from your people for the rest of the 2,300 years, Messiah is going to be here. Messiah is going to come. Okay, so now a couple piece of information he understands now. The first 490 years is Israel. In that time, Messiah is going to come. Okay, now what would happen if Israel failed? That's a question, right? So he said, the Most High is giving you this 490-year period to get your act together and prepare to meet Messiah, Daniel. So what would happen, or what has the Bible said would happen if they failed? If they didn't prepare to meet Messiah? If they didn't make an end of iniquity? If they didn't seal up the vision and prophecy and anoint the most holy? What would happen? Well, Messiah himself told us in several places, but let's go back to Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21. What would happen if they failed? Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. Luke chapter 21, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of Gentiles be fulfilled. So what would happen if they failed in this 490-year period? Jerusalem will be trodden down of the Gentiles. They will be led away captive into all nations. So in other words, this is it. If you fail here, you're going to fulfill the captivity that we talked about. Not just that one. We know about Moses' prophecy. Deuteronomy chapter 28. All right, let's take a look at that. Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy 20, we just read this last night, but this is going to happen if they failed in Daniel 9, right? Deuteronomy 28. Going to start at verse 58 and go down to verse 68. Now, y'all know this, so the Hebrews that are awakened know this one. But for those of you that don't, let's take a look, because this would be fulfilled if they failed in Daniel 9. And of course, it goes along with what Messiah said in Luke 21. Let's take a look. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear the glorious name and fearful name Yahweh thy Elohim, then Yahweh will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou art afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law. Then will Yahweh bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of Yahweh thy Most High. And it shall come to pass that as Yahweh rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so Yahweh will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught, and ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people, and from one end of the heaven of the earth even unto the other, and thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but Yahweh shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night. Thou shalt have none assurance of thy life. In the morning thou shalt say, would Yah, it were even. And at the even thou shalt say, would Yah, it were morning. For the fear of thy heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thy eyes which thou shalt see. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Same thing Messiah said. So they had this 490-year period to avoid that. To avoid it. Okay? And of course, we know our fathers failed, right? Of course, we know our fathers failed. And of course, Leviticus also tells us the same thing. Leviticus, which is another, really, we gave two witnesses, even though we're reading three scriptures, because Moses is Deuteronomy and Moses is Leviticus. But, and then of course, Messiah is in John. So we had two witnesses, but three scriptures. So let's take a look at Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus 26, beginning at verse 38, and from verse 38 down to verse 45. Leviticus 26, from 38 to 45. And ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up, and they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands. Also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. They shall confess their iniquity in the iniquity of their fathers with their trespass, which they trespassed against me, and that also have walked contrary unto me, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humble, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham will I remember, and I will remember the land. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths while she lieth desolate without them. And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly, and to break my covenant with them. For I am Yahweh, their most high. But I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their most high. I am Yahweh. So he said, this is what's going to happen if y'all don't get it right in the 490 year. Okay. Now there's even hope at the end of that, as we know. That's why we're here. But who wanted to go through all of that, right? Daniel chapter 10. Daniel chapter 9. Let's go back now. Daniel chapter 9. And we were at verse 23. Okay, 23 and 24. So now let's continue from 24 again and go to 25, right? Very important, this part, because this is where Christianity started making all kind of things up, all right? But so far, we're seeing Daniel is being warned about this 490-year period that's a part of a larger 2,300-year period. So the first 490 years was for Israel. Then there's 1,810 years after that. All right, so let's look at this. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand, now watch. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. So now, people generally blow right through this without paying attention. What he just gave us was when and he gave Daniel, was when the 2,300 years began. And at the same time, that's when the 490 years began, because the first 490 years are for Israel. So he gave him the time when it began. He said, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. Okay? Not the temple, Jerusalem. There's a difference. There were two decrees, well, there was more than two decrees, but there was two main decrees given. One was by Cyrus, which was followed up by Darius to rebuild the temple. Okay, again, 2 Chronicles chapter 36. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. at the end of the chapter, 2 Chronicles 36, at the end of the chapter, we're going to start at verse 22 and read verse 23. 2 Chronicles 36, 22 and 23. Now, in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, that the word of Yahweh spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth have Yahweh most high of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you, all of his people? Yahweh be, his most high be with him, let him go up. So that was to restore and build the temple. That took 46 years. Okay, almost 49 years, like one of those 49 of 490 weeks to build that. Okay, let's take a look in Ezra chapter 6. It's right after the Chronicles. Now, the city didn't start being built until Nehemiah. Remember, Nehemiah's book was about the building of the city. Ezra's book is about the building of the temple. But Ezra mentions all three because the city and the temple was built under the reign of three main kings, which is in Ezra chapter 6. Ezra chapter 6, going to start at verse 14. Read verse 14 and 15. Ezra chapter 6, verse 14 and 15. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet. That's where we get that book, Haggai. And Zechariah, the son of Edu. That's the prophecy of Zechariah. And they builded and finished it according to the commandment of the Most High of Israel, according to the commandment of, notice there's three kings here, Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes. See, there were three kings involved. And this house was finished in the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which is in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. So during Cyrus and Darius, they finished the temple. But then under Artaxerxes, they started the rebuilding of the city. Okay, y'all got me there? Everybody got me there? So let's go back now. And the whole thing started the 490 years. Now, historically speaking, Cyrus's and Darius decrees came first. Then Artaxerxes' decree came to allow them to build the city. That was in 457 BC. Okay, I want to make sure you're okay. So the decree of Artaxerxes for them to go ahead and build the city with Nehemiah leading it was 457 BC. That's something you can look up historically. 457 BC was the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. So that is when the 2300 years began. It did not begin with the beginning of this building of the temple. That was separate. It was the beginning of the building of the city, the building of Jerusalem, the angel told him. Okay, so that was Artaxerxes' decree in 457 BC. Why do I keep repeating that? Because the 490 years began then, 457 BC. Okay, so when you take the 490 years, 457 BC, you end up in AD 34. Okay, that was the end of the 490 years. The Messiah's ministry began in that last 7-year period. So at the end of 483 years, Messiah's ministry began. Okay, I want to make sure y'all got this so you can get your calculators out and figure this out. Some people will get the AD 33 when you take 457 and you subtract 490, you get the 33 AD. Why do I say 34 though? In the mathematical number line, you go -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? That's the mathematical number line. You go -3, -2, -1, right? Then you go 0, Then you go 1, 2, 3. But in time, there is no year 0. You follow me? There's no year 0. So you would go -3, -2, -1, 1, 2, 3. Y'all got me? So that way, you instead of 33, you would get 34. Okay? And okay, everybody got me there? And then you go back and you're in 27 AD, when Messiah begins his ministry. When he's anointed, when he's baptized, he's 30 years old, and he begins his ministry. Everybody got that so far? I know it's some math there, but 457 BC is where you start. Okay? Now, 457 BC. Now, take your calculator and subtract 2300. 2300. 457 BC. And after 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Where are you? 1844. 1844 is where you are. Okay? 1844 was the cleansing of the sanctuary. We're going to go more into that, but that's where Philadelphia, that's why we're at Philly right now. We're still there. We haven't left there yet. Started in 1844. Right? And we're going to talk about that. There's a lot to that, but that's why we're in Philly. And we haven't gotten out of that yet. Okay, and there's a lot to that we got to study, but just for now, okay? So let's go back to Daniel 9, because what the Christians do is they'll start Messiah at 483 years. Then they'll take the 7 years and put him at the end. Why they do that, I don't know. But that's what they do. But the Bible doesn't do that. Okay, so let's go back to Daniel chapter 9 now and look at it again now. So now, let's start at verse 25. Okay. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Now, let's look at this. 7 plus 60. A score is 20. I know I told you there's going to be a lot of math as we get through this. Okay. But it's basic math, but yeah, it's numbers. Bible's a book of numbers. So you got 7 weeks, 60. A score is 20. So 60 is 60. Okay? So then you have 7 plus 60 is 67. But then he said 62 weeks. So now you have 67 plus 2 is 69. All right? So of the 70 weeks, 69, he said, Messiah comes. That's 4. If you multiply that by 7, I know I'm getting crazy now. That's 483 years. So that means you have 7 left before you get to 490. So Messiah arrives after 483 years, which brings us to 27 AD. Messiah said something very important. He said a lot of important things, but he said something in Mark, very important. Notice what he says with regard to this, and also in Matthew. But let's look at Mark first. Mark chapter 1. Mark chapter 1. I'm going to start at verse 9 and go down to verse 15. Mark chapter 1 from 9 to 15. And it came to pass in those days that Yahushua came to Nazareth, where of Galilee, and was baptized of John in Jordan. And straightway coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens open, and the Spirit like a dove descending upon him. And there came a voice from heaven saying, Thou art my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And immediately the Spirit driveth him into the wilderness. And he was there in the wilderness 40 days, tempted of Satan, and was with the wild beasts, and the angels ministered unto him. Now, after that John was put in prison, Yahushua came to Galilee, preaching the gospel of the kingdom of Yah and saying, what was he saying? Notice what he said. The time is fulfilled and the kingdom of Yah is at hand. Repent ye and believe the gospel. Who's he talking to? Israelites. The time is fulfilled. In other words, the 483 years had come. And here he was. See, so it was the beginning of his ministry, age 30. Here he is. All right. The time is fulfilled. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent ye and believe the gospel. Okay. Now let's look at, I want to look at also Matthew chapter 18. Yeah, Matthew 18. Watch what he says to Peter here. Matthew chapter 18, beginning at verse 21. Read verse 21 and 22. Matthew 18, 21 and 22. Watch what Messiah says. Then came Peter or comfort to him and said, Master, how oft shall I sin? How oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times? Yahushua said unto him, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. You think that was coincidence? So his ministry began at AD 27, 483 years after the announcement to restore and build Jerusalem. Okay? And there was a 7-year period until the end of the 490 years. Let's go back to Daniel 9. So now we understand that part. I know it's a lot too. So that's why I wanted to do this in 2 parts. Now you see why. There's a lot to it, okay? So Daniel chapter 9, especially with all the confusion Christianity has put out about this very chapter. But Daniel chapter 9, so now verse 26. Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. Watch what it says here. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now, why did he say 62 weeks? Because the first 7 weeks of the 69, the first 7 weeks was rebuilding the temple. Remember what they told Messiah in John chapter 1. 46 years was this temple in building. And wilt thou raise it again in 3 days? Remember that? So that first week, that first 49 years between Cyrus' decree and Darius, they were spent that time building the temple. Okay, building the temple. And they told Messiah, he said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. And they said 46 years was this temple in building, and you're going to raise it up in 3 days? So that first 7 weeks was the building of the temple. That last 62 was the city. And he said after the city's rebuilt, Messiah is going to be cut off, but not for himself. That's right. Why was Messiah cut off? Gospel of John, chapter 11. Gospel of John, chapter 11. Gospel of John, chapter 11. This is after Messiah raised Lazarus from the dead. Gospel of John, chapter 11. Okay, after he had raised Lazarus from the dead, I'm going to read from verse 45 down to verse 52. Okay, from verse 45 to 53. Okay, notice what it said. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Yahushua did believed on him. But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Yahushua had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we? For this man doth many miracles. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him. and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, Ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, not for himself, and that the whole nation perish not. Messiah died for the people, that the nation of Israel perish not. Notice, and thus spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua should die for that nation, not for himself, right? And not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of Yah that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth, they took counsel together for to put him to death. So again, back to Daniel 9. So he was not cut off for himself, but for the nation of Israel and for Yah's children scattered to the four corners of the earth, as they would be because they failed in this 490 years. Okay, everybody got me? Testing 1, 2, 3. They're going to get more detailing. The most powerful verse is 27. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so we're starting in AD 27. Okay, Messiah's ministry starting then, 483 years. He's got 7 more years. Notice verse 27 of Daniel chapter 9. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. Let's stop there. So Messiah is going to confirm the covenant with many, that's with Israel, for 7 years. Then it said, in the middle of 7 years, Messiah is going to cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. Okay. What's half of 7? Now, this is not some hard math either. What's half of 7? He said, in the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. Half of 7 is 3.5. Y'all got me so far? You divide 7 in half, you get 3.5. Messiah started his ministry at age 30. At 33.5, what happened to cause sacrifice and oblation to cease? Messiah was put to death. And let me show you how deep this is. Are you ready? This is real deep. So it was 3.5 years into that last week, he was crucified. It was in the middle of the very week on Wednesday, he was crucified at 3:00. Because the week is 7 days long. The middle of the week is Wednesday. You follow me? The middle of the week is Wednesday. Okay? So you had, right? So it was the middle of the 7 years, in the exact middle of the week at 3:00 in the afternoon, he was crucified. Y'all got me? It wasn't on Friday, wasn't on Saturday, wasn't on Sunday. It was on Wednesday, in the middle of the week. In the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and oblation to cease. Okay. What happened after that? What happened after Messiah was crucified in the middle of the week? Okay. We talked about the second feast. So there was the wave offering. Messiah represented the offering for sin. And then there was a wave offering, which represented the first fruits of the barley harvest. And then remember, we looked at the 7 Sabbaths that lead up to Pentecost. Messiah was resurrected On that day of the wave offering, he's resurrected. And remember what he told Miriam, touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. He said, I go to my God and your God, and tell my brethren I'll meet him in Galilee. So he went up to the Father as the wave offering. And the Bible says, take a look, Matthew chapter 27, beginning at verse 50. Matthew chapter 27, beginning at verse 50. Okay, let's see here. I'm gonna actually start at verse 45, so you can see it started at noon. Okay, verse 45, Matthew 27. Now from the 6th hour, that's noon, there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour, that's 3 o'clock. And about the 9th hour, Yahushua cried with a loud voice, Ali, Ali, lama sabachthani, that is to say, my most high, why hast thou forsaken me? Some of them that stood there when they heard that said, this man calleth for Elijah. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. The rest said, let be. Let us see whether Elijah will come and to save him. Yahushua, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were opened. And many bodies of the saints which slept arose and came out of the graves after his resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. Many saints arose with Messiah. That's the early harvest of the barley. That's the early harvest of the barley. So now that's the first fruits. That's the leading to the feast of the first fruits, which would come 50 days later, Pentecost. Messiah was with his disciples for 40 days. Then 10 days later, the Spirit was poured out, the early rain on the Israelites. 3.5 years later, something else happened. The end of 490 years. What happened? 3.5 years, Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7 happened. What happened in Acts chapter 7? We're not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to read the parts that we need for now. Acts chapter 7. Actually, I'm going to start at Acts chapter 6 and then go to chapter 7. So Acts chapter 6. I'm going to start at verse 1 in Acts chapter 6 and go down to verse 8. Acts chapter 6 from verse 1 to 8. And in those days, when the number of the disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews. Grecians are Greek-speaking Hebrews that lived among the Greeks and lived like the Greeks. They were called Grecians, but they were Hebrews. Okay? And it says, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. They weren't being treated equally. Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples unto them and said, it is not reason that we should leave the word of Yah and serve tables. Wherefore, brethren, look ye out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Holy Ghost and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. So feeding of the poor widows of the Hebrews, they were neglecting those that were dwelling among those that spoke Greek and were dwelling among the Grecians, but they were Hebrews, and they were murmuring because they said, listen, we still Hebrews, even though we were coming out of the Greek area, we still Hebrews. And they wanted to have them also, the widows wanted to be served. They wanted to have food given to them. So the apostles like, we can't do that and preach the word. So let's appoint 7 men that they can go serve these Hebrews. Okay. Verse 4. But we will give ourselves continually to prayer and to the ministry of the word. And the saying pleased the whole multitude. And they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Ghost, and Philip and Prochorus and Nicanor and Timon and Parmenas and Nicholas, the proselyte of Antioch. So they chose 7 men, Hebrews, all. Only one that may not have been was the last one, Nicholas. He was a proselyte from Antioch, a convert to the Israelite nation. Verse 6, whom they set before the apostles, and when they had prayed, they laid their hands on them, and the word of Yah increased, and the number of the disciples multiplied in Jerusalem greatly, and a great company of priests were obedient to the faith. Okay, so that's the result. Now, Stephen is who we're focusing on now. Now, verse 8, Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Verse 9, and there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, and the Cyrenians and Alexandrians, and them of Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. I want you to notice where these brothers were from. These were all Hebrews that had been scattered. But notice where they were scattered from. They call it the synagogue of the Libertines. That's from like Libya. That's Put, North Africa. The Cyrenians, North Africa. The Alexandrians, Egypt, North Africa. So these brothers were Hebrews that were in the synagogue representing these areas. And then, of course, Cilicia, that's over there by the Cyprus, where Paul came from, scattered of Asia, disputing with Stephen. So these were all Hebrews disputing with Stephen that didn't believe the Messiah had come. And he was filled with the Spirit from the Father. And they couldn't argue with him. Notice what it said. Verse 10, from verse 10 down to verse 15. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake. Then they suborned men which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against Yah. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council, and set up false witnesses, which said, this man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us. They were false witnesses, which means he didn't say those things, and no, they weren't going to change Moses' customs. I want to make sure y'all understand that. Verse 15, and all that sat in the council, looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. So they brought him unto arrest to the religious council, a man-made religious council, supposed to be representing the Hebrews. And they were accusing him of doing away with Moses' law, which he wasn't doing. And they had false witnesses testify to this. So chapter 7, he begins to speak. And he goes over the history of Israel in chapter 7. Okay. And at the end of chapter 7, as he's finishing, he's about to be martyred. And before he's martyred, he testifies and bears witness of what he saw. Notice in Acts chapter 7, beginning at verse 51. Acts chapter 7. This is the end of the 490 years right here. So Acts chapter 7, beginning at verse 51. Ye stiff-necked and circumcised in heart and ears, ye do always resist the Holy Ghost. As your fathers did, so do ye. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before of the coming of the just one, of whom ye have now been betrayers and murderers, who have received the law by the disposition of angels and have not kept it. When they heard these things, they were cut to the heart, and they gnashed on him with their teeth. But he, being full of the Holy Ghost, looking up steadfastly into heaven, saw the glory of Yah, and Yahushua standing on the right hand of Yah. He looked up and he saw Messiah standing beside his Father. Why was that significant? Because when Messiah went up, the Bible tells us he was sitting at the right hand of his Father. He only stands up when there's judgment. Okay, he doesn't stand up until there's judgment. He sits at the right hand. But Stephen said he saw him and he saw him standing at the right hand. which bugged out the people because they didn't believe he was Messiah, number one. And then number two, he's showing him in a place of judgment, which is judgment upon them, which he just said, y'all have not obeyed the law. You're just stiff-necked like your fathers. You have rejected Messiah. You have not obeyed the law. And I'm seeing Messiah standing at Father's right hand. Okay, verse 57. Then they cried out with a loud voice and stopped their ears and ran upon him with one accord and cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witnesses laid down their clothes at a young man's feet whose name was Saul. And they stoned Stephen, calling upon Yah and saying, Yahushua, Master, receive my spirit. And he knelt down and cried with a loud voice, Master, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he had said this, he fell asleep. They killed him. Now, I want you to notice it was illegal for the Hebrews under Roman occupation to put anybody to death. It was illegal. They could not do that. They weren't allowed to do that. Remember, with Messiah, they had to have Pilate command him to be put to death. But they were so crazed with hate and anger and rejecting the conviction power of the spirit that Stephen was speaking by, they just went out there and stoned him to death. Okay, that was the end of the 490 years, AD 34. Now they were condemned. Now we know the next step was what Messiah had already said. They're going to trodden down Jerusalem by the Gentiles, and you're going to be taken captive into all nations. What happened in 70 AD? In the meantime, between that 34 AD and 70 AD, basically most of the New Testament was written. That's all the letters of Paul, the letters of Peter. It wasn't until you get to Revelation where that's already happened. John is now on the island of Patmos. It's already been destroyed. Okay, so that's the history right there. So now the question, why are we in Philly? You get AD 34. Now you have 1,810 years left. It takes you to 1844. And I'm going to explain further why that's significant and why we are in Philly now because of that. I wanted you to get to that point, all right? But man, we got some time. I think I mean, if y'all can hang out a little bit, I can show you a little bit more because we still got time. It's 52 minutes. I still got time. It's not even an hour yet. So if y'all want to hang out a little bit, we can go a little bit further. Is that okay with y'all? What y'all think in the chat? I just want to make sure. Is that okay before we go a little bit further for just getting you some more about Philly? So, okay, cool. So now 1844. Now, let's talk about the feast. Let's talk about the feast again. Okay. So now we understand that the Passover, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, happened first. Messiah was crucified. We understand after his resurrection, the Feast of Weeks, Pentecost, happened. Now there's a Day of Atonement. Now it's very important that we understand what I just said. It's called the Day of Atonement. Did you catch that? It's not called the Week of Atonement, the 100 Years of Atonement. It's called the Day of Atonement. Okay. All right. You ready? Here's a question. If it's the Day of Atonement and we're talking in prophetic terms, how long does that atonement time last? Y'all caught that question? So we're talking about the Day of Atonement. One day, the 15th day of the 7th month. The 10th day of the 7th month. That's right. So in prophetic period, the Day of Atonement is 1 year. Okay. We're going to skip ahead to the seals for this purpose so that we can show something. Okay. So let's go to this. We said that was the sixth church. Let's go to the sixth seal. You said the sanctuary was going to be cleansed at the end of 2,300 days. 1844 is the end of that. So what happened here? We're going to go ahead for this purpose so we can see the match here. So let's go to the chapter 6 of the book of Revelation, and let's go to the sixth seal. So theoretically speaking, okay, you ready? if there's a Day of Atonement and it lasts a year, and then we know about the feast that the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month. We know that the Feast of Tabernacles is on the 15th day of the 7th month. So, spiritually and prophetically speaking, the Day of Atonement would last 1 year. And then 5 years later, Messiah would come. Right? So you go 1843, he enters into the Most Holy. He finishes in 1844. And then in 1849 or 1848, he's ready to come back. But something happened. Let's take a look. Revelation chapter 6, beginning at verse 12. Revelation chapter 6, beginning at verse 12. Okay, ready? And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? This is a description of the return of Messiah. So it happens in the sixth, it appears, in the sixth seal, which is also the sixth church. Why didn't he come back yet then? The year was over. Why didn't he come back? Well, we must read chapter 7, because chapter 7 is really an extension of the sixth seal. You don't get to the seventh seal until chapter 8, verse 1. So everything that happens between Revelation 6:12 and Revelation 8:1 is the sixth seal. So there was a delay. There's a problem. Well, let's ask a couple of questions. Where were the true Hebrews in 1843 and 1844? They were in slavery. Interestingly enough, in 1861, the Civil War began. In 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, interestingly enough, after 1844. But this was just the beginning of what needed to happen, which is now described in Revelation chapter 7. So let's look at Revelation chapter 7. We're still in the sixth seal here and the sixth church, Revelation 7. Okay, Revelation 7, going to begin at verse 1 and read verse 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 2. All right, let's read it. That's right. Y'all catching it already. Y'all seeing it, but we need more proof. So let's look at this. Revelation chapter 7, verse 1 and 2. And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living Most High. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. Stop. Okay. Before we continue, we need to look at this. Remember when we started and we looked at Zechariah? And after the 4 horns came 4 carpenters that were going to scatter the powers of the Gentiles? Here they are. Here are the 4 carpenters. That's the 4 winds, the angels holding back winds for the 4 corners of the earth, that they're given to hurt the earth and the sea. They're told to hold. Wait a minute. I want you to notice verse 2. The angel with the seal. Verse 2. Look at verse 2. What is he doing? He's ascending. When you're ascending, are you coming down or are you going up? Simple question, right? If you're ascending, are you coming down or are you going up? Very simple question. Obviously, you're going up. So here you have an angel. He has a seal in his hand and he's rising up back to the third heaven. And as he's going up, he says something with a loud voice. What did he say? Verse 3, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our Most High in their foreheads. So he came down with the seal. Everything's prepared. Messiah is ready. Father is ready. He's ready to seal 144,000. But they're not ready. They're in slavery. So he goes back up to the third heaven with the seal in his hand, and he's telling the four carpenters, hold back them winds until we have sealed Yah's servants in their foreheads. Why did they go through all of that exercise? To go through all of that already knowing they weren't going to be ready. I mean, they obviously knew, Father obviously knew we were still in slavery. Why did he go through all that exercise? You know why? To let you and me know, brethren, there's only one thing left. It's the 144,000 seal. That's the only thing he cares about right now. That's the only thing Father Yah in the third heaven with Messiah is dealing with right now. They got everything else done. They're just waiting right now. They're waiting to seal the. Now, at that time, they weren't even born yet. But he's telling us and showing us the importance of that sealing taking place. So therefore, the Day of Atonement, the cleansing of the sanctuary, has a delay built into it. And the delay is where we are living right now. You following me? So everybody that's where we at right now. We're in the delay. The delay only means the seal of the 144,000, which has already started. Okay? More. I got more for you. I think we got time. I can get through some of this. I got more. I got some more for you. Okay? Verse 4. Revelation chapter 7, verse 4. Revelation 7, verse 4. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. So the tribes were scattered according to prophecy because of the sins of our fathers, failing to be ready for Messiah at the end of 490 years, stoning Stephen, going into captivity, as Deuteronomy and Ezekiel and Isaiah and everybody told us. And now the Father is waiting for them, and not waiting, idly waiting, working to get them prepared so that they can receive his seal of perfect righteousness in their forehead and be ready to meet head on the beast and the dragon and the false prophet. Okay? That's where we at right now. That's where we at. That's why we're in Philadelphia. Let's go now to Philly. Let's go to Philly. Revelation chapter 3. Let's go to Philly. Now you can see it more clearly. Now you understand why he said a door is open and no man can shut it. Why he said that. I have set before you an open door. Notice, he says some things about Philly he don't say about nobody else because the 144,000 are in Philly. Okay? That's why we are here right now. Now you know where we are. Let's look at Philly. Revelation chapter 3, beginning at verse 7. Beginning at verse 7. There's a lot here, man. Beginning at verse 7. I'm going to read it in pieces, though. From verse 7 down to verse 9. Let's start off Philadelphia. Revelation chapter 3, from 7 to 9. I want you to notice, too, how many different books did we use for this Bible study? Did I need the Apocrypha for this one? How about the book of Jasher? How about the book of Enoch? Did I need all of that, any of that for this? I want you to notice that. Please read your Bibles. Read your King James. The 66 books got more than enough information for you to know everything you need to know. Okay? Revelation chapter 3, beginning at verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. I know thy works. And behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, behold, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and to worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. So without getting smacked around by YouTube, let me just say this. There's a group of people that are claiming to be Jews and are not. And the Most High says they're the synagogue of Satan. And he says they're going to come worship before the feet of the true Hebrews and to know the favor that Yah has placed on the true Hebrews. Another name for them is Edomites. You know why we're in Philly now, right? He says you have little strength. Isn't that true? We don't have the military might and the power and the money, but we are keeping his word, and we have not denied his name. We know he's not Jesus Christ. We know his name. He's not God or Lord. His name is Yah. We know his name. Okay? So we already saw the synagogue of Satan, who say they are Jews and are not. They are going to eventually recognize. That's already began. There's some of them that are already recognizing who the true Hebrews are. There's some of them already recognizing that. They're out there already. But when the power of the Spirit of Father Yah comes on us in the latter rain now, you're going to really see some things. There's going to be some Edomites that are being converted. The Bible tells us that. Okay, Hosea tells us that. Hosea 14 shows us that. There's some Edomites going to be converted. Of course, most of them are going to be destroyed. Okay, but not all. We can't judge all. There's no all of anybody. There's going to be people from every kindred and race, every color that's going to come to this truth. Okay, but it's going to be led by the true Hebrews. Right. Revelation chapter 3, Philadelphia. Notice verse 10. Notice verse 10. Oh, we're going to get more into this as we get deeper into Revelation, but verse 10 is powerful. Note, all of this is powerful. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. So when these winds get let loose, after we give the message, he's going to keep us. Remember, in the last 7 plagues, the Most High put a difference between the Israelites and the Egyptians. He's going to do that again. He's going to do that again. Okay? Verse 11 and 12. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Very important. Hold that truth. Hold it tight. That's why I say read your Bible. Pray to your Father in the name of the Messiah. And let him guide you. Hold that truth fast. Hold it tight. He will guide you. Okay? Verse 11, verse 12. Watch this now. This is deep. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my Most High. He shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my Most High, and the name of the city of my Most High, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my Most High. And I will write upon him my new name. The 144,000 have written upon them Father's name, Messiah's name, and New Jerusalem's name. Watch this. Keep that in your mind now when we go to Revelation chapter 14. Revelation chapter 14. Revelation 14, beginning at verse 1. Revelation 14, beginning at verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. Let me ask you a question, y'all. When a husband and a bride get married, who takes the name of who? In other words, if a man marries a woman, who takes whose name? When a man marries a woman, except in this liberal age in which we live, but generally speaking, she takes on the name and tribe of her husband. She takes on the name and tribe of her husband. Zechariah married a woman of the tribe of Judah named Zechariah's wife was named Elizabeth, but she was married to Zechariah, who was a Levite. So she was with the Levite tribe. But her cousin Miriam, the mother of the Messiah, was of Judah. So now you have the woman taking on the man's name, the bride. He had the name of the Father, Messiah, and the New Jerusalem. That's why New Jerusalem is mentioned as the bride, and the 144,000 are mentioned as the bride, because the 144,000 have all that on them. Also, let's go back to chapter 3 for a minute. Verse 12 of Revelation chapter 3. Him that overcometh, I will make a pillar in the temple. That means a fixture in the temple. Something that supports the temple. That's not everybody. That's the 144,000. That's why we're in Philly. Okay? We got more. I wish I could just share it all with you, but I can't right now. We got to go step by step, but there's a lot more from this word right here. There's a lot more. But I wanted you to know why we were in Philly. Okay? All right. All right. So we're going to continue this. Now we went to Philadelphia. We're going to touch on Philly again next time before we head to the 7th church, Laodicea. But I wanted to get this out there, this part. And as you saw, now you can understand why we had to go all the way to Daniel and come back up so that we can know where we are right now. We're in Philly right now. We're in the 6th church, the 6th seal, and the 6th trumpet. That's where we are right now. Okay. And we're still working our way through it. We're just beginning. We're going to be all the way in here for a minute, but not that many years left. Not that many years. Not that many. Definitely less than 12. Less than 12 years. And this is done. Okay? Less than 12. But we'll finish that when we talk about Laodicea in the next Bible study next week by the grace of the Most High on Friday. Yeah, the Bible is amazing. That's what I'm saying. People just have to read it. You can't, it's not like, in our age in which we live, people think they can get everything like this. The Bible ain't like that. You got to spend time with it. And I tell people, just think of it. You're getting married to somebody you want to spend the rest of your life with. You can't rush that. You got to make sure you know that person. A lot of people marrying people they don't even know, and they don't end up knowing until it's too late. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So you want to be safe. You got to know who you're marrying. You got to know them, know who they are, where they're from, what their experiences are, what they hate, what they love, what they're about. Well, baby, let me tell you something. You better know the Bible like that. And it can't come real fast. You got to take your time. Okay? It's going to change you. Just like marriage changes you. If you're in a marriage and you ain't changed, then you ain't been married. You got to change. The Bible's going to change us. But we got to read it. Read the whole thing. That's right. There ain't no fast food. And everybody in this day and age is used to fast food. Everybody is. And well, let me just Google it, right? Boom, Google it, right? You want to know something? Google it. Boom, Google, boom, right? Or give me the synopsis of it. You know, that's how it is. But you cannot do the Bible like that. You're never going to get it if you do that. You will never get it. You have to spend time with it. And the Most High will bless you for spending the time. You are not wasting your time when you take your time with the word of the Most High. You are not wasting your time. Okay? Praise Yah. Please, brothers, let's continue to pray for each other. Let's keep each other lifted up as we are now approaching that time. Now that we see how serious the time is and where we are right now. Yes, indeed, Brother Mark. But yeah, so let's keep each other in prayer. Let us be faithful to the Most High. Pray for me and my family, my wife, that we will be faithful to the Most High. We can fall just as quickly and easily as anybody else. So keep us in prayer, please. Guide and direct that the Most High guide and direct our path. Most High bless you and keep you. Most High cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Shalom.